Welcome back. This is your math tutor Naresh. So this is the second video of common factoring in pairs, and in this tutorial I want to do some practice questions. So let's get started. So question 1, we're given ax plus by plus bx plus ay. So this is the question we're given, and the question is to factor. So the first thing you do is always look for a common factor. So we'll take all four terms collectively, see if there is anything common. And there doesn't appear to be anything common in all four terms. So the next step is, can we pair them? Can we group them? So and then the question is, which two terms do you want to pair? So in this case, so let's try. We can't group the first two because there's nothing common. So I can probably group these two because at least I've got x's in those, and I can group these. So try those, and if it works, if that doesn't work, then you can come back and pair, choose different pairs. So then rewrite, so ax plus bx, so that's what we want to pair. And then I said we always want to have a plus sign in between. So now copy by plus ay. Alright, so now common factor each bracket separately. So from this bracket we can common factor x, and inside we're left with a and b, so a plus b. From here we can common factor y, and then inside here we're left with b plus a. So did we get the same bracket? Yes, we did. A plus b is the same as b plus a. So these two are identical brackets. So that's the common bracket. We can pull that out. A plus b is a common factor, and here we're left with x, and from here we're left with plus y. And that's the answer to this question. Alright. So we'll do a few more examples. So, alright, so we'll do the next question. So question B. So we're given mx plus 2y plus my plus 2x. So mx plus 2y plus my plus 2x. Make sure you copy the question correctly. And now in this case, since we are common factoring in pairs, we'll just start pairing them to begin with. But on a test or on a midterm or a final, you wouldn't know, right? So the first step is always look for common factor, take all terms collectively. If that doesn't work, then you start pairing, and then start your process. So in this case, I can group first and third because I've got m that's common, and then I can then group the remaining two. So I probably could have grouped these two as well because it's got a y in it. So whatever you see first, pair, and then move forward. So let's rewrite our pairs. mx plus my in brackets, always have a plus, and then we have 2y plus 2x. Okay, so here the common factor is variable m. Then inside we're left with x plus y. From the second bracket, common factor is 2, and we're left with y plus x. So x plus y is the same as y plus x, so they are the same term. So they both mean the same thing. So now we can pull this bracket as a common factor. So x plus y is our common factor, and here we're left with m plus 2. Notice once you pull out this factor, then this other remaining factor just comes down here. And from here you pull out x plus y or y plus x, then this remaining factor will just go in the second bracket. Okay, so that's the final answer for this question. And you can try pairing pairing which two. You could try pairing mx with 2x and then 2y and my, and then see if you get the same answer. Okay. Okay, so let's look at example C. So C is, the question is y squared minus y cubed plus 1 minus y. So which two terms do we want to pair? Well, we can pair the first two, and the last two there's nothing. So I can pair this one with that one, I can pair this one with that one, right? So, well, let's just go with the first two and the last two, right? Okay, so y squared minus y to the 3, so I still want to put it in brackets. I always want to have a plus here, and 1 minus y is my second pair. Okay, so now from here, what can I pull out? Y is common. We always pull out the lowest exponent, right? So we have y squared, y to the 3. So y squared is the lowest exponent. So what am I left with? A factor of 1. Y squared times 1 gives me y squared. Y squared times what will give me negative y cubed? That'll be negative y, right? Oh, look, my bracket here is the same. So from here, right, what can I pull out? Right? What can I pull out? There's nothing to pull out because there's nothing common. It's already in its lowest form, right? So, but we can always factor 1, right? We can always factor 1 or negative 1 or multiply by 1, right? So we can always factor 1. So I'm going to factor 1 just so that I can visually see what I'm doing. So if I take out a factor of 1, nothing really changes inside the bracket. The bracket remains 1 minus y. But now this will help me at my next step, right? So the common bracket is 1 minus y, 1 minus y, and that's the common bracket. So we factor that out. And now, so I pulled out 1 minus y as my common factor. What am I left with? Well, this goes here, y squared, and this comes here, plus 1. So this is the reason why I put 1, so I know that 1 goes here. If there was nothing here, I might get confused. I might just leave this blank or put a 0, and that would not be correct, right? So that's the reason why I factored 1 out. You can always factor out 1 from this term, and you can always factor out negative 1, right, if that's what you needed to do. Alright, so this is the final answer for this question. Okay, so let's continue. So we'll look at example D. In D, we're given mx plus my minus nx minus ny. So again, we are common factoring in pairs. So let's group the first two and the last two, since we have m's in the first two and n's in the second two. So here I'm going to rewrite mx plus my in brackets. Always have a plus here, and copy the last two terms. So that's negative nx minus ny. So what's the common factor here? The letter m. And what are you left with? You're left with x plus y. And from here, what's common is n, right? N is common, but at the same time, negative n is also common. So it's my choice here whether I want to pull out a factor of n as a common factor or a factor of negative n. It all depends on what I'm trying to get to. So if I factor out n, then I'm going to be left with minus negative x minus y in here, right? The next question is going to be, are these two the same? The signs are different, right? So this tells me that I really need to factor out negative n, not just n. So, or I can do that at the next step. So at the next step now I can factor negative 1 out, right? Or, to save time, what I can do is, I can actually see that instead of factoring n, right, I should factor negative n. So with practice you'll be able to see that too. So it makes sense to factor out negative n, so it'll save us a step. So factor out negative n, then what am I left with? X plus y, right? So you can multiply it out, negative n times x, is negative nx. Negative n times y is negative ny. So that's the reason why I pulled out a negative factor, so that my brackets would be identical. Okay, so now the common factor is the bracket x plus y, so we pull that out, and then in the other bracket we're left with m, and we're left with minus n. So that's the final answer for this question. So the factors are x plus y and m minus n. Alright, so let's move on, do some more practice. Practice makes perfect, and you do need to get a lot of practice. The more practice you get, the better. The concept isn't changing, we're applying the same concept, right? But it's just that repetition helps you with speed, and it helps you catch your errors if you are making them. Okay, so ax minus bx minus 3a plus 3b. So that's the question factor. So we're doing by grouping, so I can group the first two and the last two. So ax minus bx in brackets, always have a plus here, and then in second bracket you have negative 3a plus 3b. So let's common factor. Common factor here is x. We're left with a minus b. Now here, so I need to decide whether I want to pull out a factor of 3 or a negative 3, right? So, and that depends on what you want to end up with, what bracket, right? So here I have a, which is positive, b that is negative. So if I pull out a factor of 3, then I'm going to be left with a factor of negative a inside the bracket. Do I want negative a or do I want positive a? I want positive a. So it makes sense for me to pull out a factor of negative 3. So let's do that. So pull out a factor of negative 3, then what are we left with inside the bracket? So negative 3 times what will give me negative 3a? Simply an a, right? So negative 3 times a gives me negative 3a. So negative 3 times what will give me positive 3b? So negative times negative is going to be positive, right? And then 3 is already there, so it's just a b. So let's multiply it out. Negative times negative is positive, so 3 times b is 3b, right? So that was the reason why we factored negative 3 out, negative factor. Now we end up with the same bracket, a minus b, right? So now the common factor is the bracket. Bracket contains a minus b, so pull that bracket as a common factor. And now the remaining factor, simply we place x and minus 3. And that's the final answer for this question. Okay, so we'll do maybe a couple more, 3 more, and then I will wrap the tutorial. So there isn't anything else for me to teach here. So pretty much that's the structure. You pair, you know, 2 terms, and then you factor, and then you want to end up with the same bracket, right? And that actually tells you that you're on the right track. So, alright, so let's do a couple more examples. Okay, so now let's look at, something like this. So if we are given 3ab minus 20cd minus 15ac plus 4bd. Okay, I just want to make sure that I copy the question correctly. So 3ab minus 20cd minus 15ac plus 4bd. Okay, so the first step would be to see if there's anything common when you take all 4 terms collectively. And that isn't the case because 3 doesn't go into 20 or 4, right? So, and nor are the variables a, b, c, d in all 4 terms. So anyways, we knew that because we were told to common factor in pairs. So let's pair. What do we want to pair? So here I got AB, I got CD, so not a good pair. Okay, so we got A here, maybe I can do that, and I can then pair this with that, that's got a D, that's got a D. So something for me to start with. So okay, so that's how I decide my pairs. If that doesn't work, then I can always come back and try a different pair. So I'm choosing this and that because of the A, and then I'm left with the other two. Yeah, they got a D in it, so hopefully that's good enough. And that will work. So 3AB minus 15AC, in brackets, always have a plus here. So minus 20CD plus 4BD. Okay, so let's common factor now. So from here I can factor 3, and I can also factor A. So 3A is the common factor. We're left with B minus 5C. And now from here, okay, so do I factor out negative number or a positive number? So that depends on what signs do I want. I want the B to be positive and C to be negative. So here is my C. So if I pull out negative, then this will become positive. So I want C to be negative. So I need to take out a positive factor. So I'll take out a factor of 4, because 4 is what goes into 4 and 20. And the letter that's common is D. So 4D times what will give me negative 20CD? So it'll be negative 5C. Right? So 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. D times C is CD or DC. And then the last one is plus, missing a factor of B. 4D times B will give me 4BD. Right? So now the question is, do I have the same stuff inside the bracket? B minus 5C. If I read this backwards, B minus 5C. So B is positive, B is positive. The 5C is negative, 5C is negative. So yes, these two brackets are identical, and I will pull B minus 5C as a common factor. And then in this bracket, the remaining factors are 3A and 4D, so plus 4D. So that's the final answer here. This can't be factored any further, so that's the final answer. So B minus B minus 5C times 3A plus 4D. Okay. So that's that there, and I'll do one last example, and then I'm going to wrap the tutorial. So maybe I won't do as much talking. I'll just go through this one very quickly. So we're given x squared y minus y squared minus x cubed plus xy. So which two do we want to pair? So okay, so maybe let's try x squared and the x cubed, and then the y squared and the y. Okay, so x squared y, so let's rewrite minus x to the 3. So always have a plus here, and then we have negative y squared plus xy. Okay, so what's common here? I can pull out a factor of x to the 2. We always pull out the variable with the lowest exponent. So here we're left with a factor of y, and here with minus 1. Oh, sorry, making a mistake. So x squared times x gives me x cubed, so y minus x. From here we can pull out a factor of y, right? So the question now is positive y or negative y. So okay, so I want the y term to be positive, the x to be negative. So I'm going to have to pull out a factor of negative. So negative y is what I will pull out. So negative y times y will give me negative y squared. And then I will need a negative here, because negative times negative will give me positive. So y times x, right? Okay, so you can double check. Negative y times y gives me negative y squared. Negative times negative is positive. Y times x is yx or xy. So now, yes, the bracket is the same, and that's a common factor. So y minus x. And what's the remaining factor? The remaining factor is x squared minus y. So that's the final answer with this, and this is where I'm going to wrap the tutorial. I hope you found it useful. Please like or subscribe, and we'll see each other in the next video. Thank you for watching.